morning all. Once again, we have a Pianoside lockdown session for our choir. So I'm just going to talk a little bit today about Faire is the Heaven, piece which I suspect some of you know very well, so you probably won't need to know all what I'm going to talk about, and some of you perhaps won't have come across at all. It's very much, of the pieces we're doing, it's very much a church music piece, very much a piece beloved of cathedral choirs, collegiate choirs. My ex-collegio choir meets in the summer. It's one of our sort of top anthems that we do every now and then, and we all love it. But outside that context, I think it's probably not often performed in concerts, although, as you will find, I've got some links for you, which I'll put up. There are quite a few performances of it online, and quite a few of those do seem to be in concerts, but on the whole, it's not a sort of particularly well-known concert piece. It's a little bit what my mentor and the lovely music fellow at Cambridge at St Catherine's, Peter Lihuru, it's a little bit what he would describe as churchese, but having said that, I think I've said somewhere else that he came along and described our heaven as very fair when we first sang it at Cambridge, and when sung well, it's a terrific piece. Just a word about William Harris. William Harris, who composed the music. I think the thing about Harris is that he's one of many church, cathedral organists that you find in any country, but the English tradition is such that they mostly start off as choir boys, work their way through maybe one or two London churches, various cathedrals, hold posts as organist and choir master, and his trajectory, if you like, is very similar to many others. He was born in 1883, died in 1973, so lived a good long life. He was assistant at Lichfield Cathedral for a bit before taking on the posts of organist and choir master at New College in Oxford and then Christchurch. And when he was at Oxford, he also, as mostly the Christchurch conductor normally does do, he ran the Oxford Bar Choir. He also founded an opera club, where apparently he gave the first modern performance under Sir Jack Westrop, who later became professor, of Monteverdi's Faire, which is quite a significant thing, back in 1925. 1933, Harris went on to St George's, Windsor, and I didn't know this, but apparently he actually taught Queen Elizabeth and Margaret music and did a little choir session for them, and as well as being Royal College of Music professor for about 30 years as well. So classic organist's life, and a full one and so forth. Now, many of these organists in England have composed various pieces, some of them perhaps less distinguished than others. And I think it has to be said that Harris's other compositions, apart from this one, Faire is the Heaven, and a very similar motet called Bring Us, O Lord God, they are all rather churchese and predictable and four square. I quickly checked. I've never done his, for example, his canticles, Magnificat and Nunc Dimittis in A. He wrote a setting in A and a setting in A minor. You listen to the first few bars and you think, yeah, we've heard all this before. It's kind of fairly predictable, doesn't step outside the boundaries too much. So he is something of a two-hit wonder, not a one-hit wonder, but a two-hit wonder, because Faire is the Heaven and its partner, Bring Us, O Lord God, are just extraordinarily beautiful and outstanding pieces of music by any stretch of the imagination, and everybody loves them. And yet, really, everything else he did was kind of rather predictable and rather normal. So, what is it that makes Faire is the Heaven, and indeed Bring Us, O Lord God? Most of the same things apply, but what makes Faire is the Heaven so special? I think that they're divided into three areas, really. One is, in both pieces, he wrote them in D flat major, but he also wrote them for a double choir. Now, of course, the English cathedral choir is so suited to this because you have one choir on one side and one choir on the other. You have lovely acoustics, and so you bounce ideas back and forth, and so you get, it's the best example you can find when teaching music. I'd always used to refer to this. If you're trying to find something what's known as antiphonal, the side-to-side effect. I mean, Monteverdi did it and Gabrielli and people like that in St Mark's, Venice, where they'd have choirs up in that gallery and up in the top and down the bottom. The antiphonal effect, the spatial effect. So a lot of it is to do with that, I think. You get a lot of very obvious bouncing the ideas from one side to the other. They obviously, right at the beginning, we get the... Then the other side sort of answers with... So either doing exactly the same thing or something very similar. So there's all those sort of obvious antiphonal effects. Every now and then there are little touches which are not quite the normal antiphonal thing, and I think one of the things that makes the piece is these little tiny touches every now and then. They're subtle things that are only known by somebody who really understands choirs and how they work. So even on the very first page, the opening chord is provided, it's slightly odd, but the second choir sing open fifths, while the first choir, altos only, sing the third. So obviously the combination is... So he obviously wanted the F in the altos, the third, to somehow slightly stand out, and unusual, but that's what he's done. So you get... And then the rest of the first choir come in. Another little tiny sort of delicate touch that I've always thought is odd, but actually very effective, is right on the last couple of pages. So I'll talk about the harmony in a minute, but we get these strange falling sequences of notes. Extraordinary B flat in both the soprano and tenor of choir 1 against the, and that's the predictable one is, but as well as the predictable one you get. Now most people wouldn't notice that, just hearing it once, because they're just sort of caught up in the general swirl, but it's an extraordinary little touch. And the same thing really on the very last page, the last line, when you get these very long sustained chords. The second chord alto holds on to an E flat when everybody else goes down to a D flat major chord, and it holds on to that, and then it just moves away finally, and then the first alto does it on the very final chord. It's just such a nice little touch, subtle sort of thing. So that's a couple of things in the texture, but the whole effect of the texture. Of course, there are some wonderful big moments when both choirs are really going at it, and those are very rich and full, as you'd expect. Then you've got the harmony. I mean, there's no doubt the harmony is one of the things that makes everybody go, oof. So as soon as it starts, again, all choirs that know this piece, you've only got to play a chord of D flat major, and a lot of people go, oof, and then they'll know. But the second chord, and then you're away. And people are kind of start swooning in the aisle straight away. Multiple suspensions. There's your seventh, and there's your second or your ninth. And then resolving not quite expectedly. And you suddenly realise you're in a language which is full of sixths, sevenths, all over the place. effect of both choirs. Get the seventh and the tenor, and then this. And although really it's the harmony that carries this piece, perhaps more than the melody, but there were just lovely melodic touches like that where you just swoon. So again, in the next bit, get a suspension in the tenor. There it is again, lovely seventh, sixth. And then the second time, what a lovely melody line. Suspensions in the whole of choral literature for the tenors, and they have it against the soprano. The tenors are quite high up on a nice top F, the altos are below them, and the sopranos are only semitone above the tenors, so it's very tight. And then he realised it was a good line, so he did it again. That's basically the same. So absolutely gorgeous stuff. There it is again, both a seventh and a ninth at the same time. And then this extraordinary modulation to move from D flat major into A major. You can't get much further than that. Sevenths, ninths, all moulded into one gorgeous sort of sounding chord. So extraordinary vibrant middle section, and then some quite amazing moments when to get back from he gets into A, then he gets to A minor, he gets to C. Remember, we started in D flat, so it's miles away. And here we go. And then from that A7 chord, it melts into D flat major. Tricky for the choir. Extraordinary moment. Come back to C, sort of, and then it begins to sort of G minor 7 chord there. A major chord, but with a seventh in the bass. One of my favourite chords I used to say to the boys, that's an A7 chord, but the seventh in the bass. Now normally, you'd sort of want to go from there to there. 9 times out of 10 you would. But here, then he holds on to the G. And he does that. It's kind of like the key signature chord in this piece. Or just the signature chord, but it's the key signature that does it as well. Change your key. That's another tricky moment for the choir. But anyway, and then he does the same sort of thing. He has this extraordinary patch of falling by a semitone. D7, and now quietly rather than climactically he does the same thing. So D7, and then goes to A flat 7, and then we'll move into that. So they're lovely. He really knew his harmony, clearly. There are some lovely harmonic fingerprints that make this piece special, and that's why everybody goes, ha. And of course, I think the other great thing he did was in both this piece and the other, but in this piece particularly, he's setting an absolutely beautiful text, isn't he? So Edmund Spenser, the poem, in the first place, makes for some inspiring moments. So lots of words about like cherubim, which he sets, and fiery light, So you get the cherubim in the middle section and those eternal burning seraphim, which from their faces dart out fiery, fiery light. Oops. It's fiery, fiery light. Image of such endless perfectness. Each other for excelling. This bit, that the image of far excelling. That lovely bottom of page 9. This bit again. Gorgeous harmony. And then let's say the image of endless perfectness right at the far at the very top. Added second to the suspension, and then a nice, hopefully a bottom D flat rattled out by the second basses. It's an absolute gem. It's lovely to be doing it again, and as I say, he's a two-hit wonder, because the other piece, Bring Us O Lord God, which I've also given you a link to, is equally beautiful, just different, but it's so much the same, and yet it's not identical. It's clearly another piece, it's a different text, and he does do some extraordinary moments. Sorry. Final cadence goes from B flat to D flat. So I wish I could write music like that. He did really sort of hit the button on those pieces, and he will be remembered forevermore for those, even though Harrison A major is not the best Magnanunk in the world. So there we go. Faire is to Heaven. We look forward to doing that when we're all back together again, and hopefully I know things are still pretty dire for some, and we have doctor friends who are doing amazing jobs, but there is this sense of hope now, isn't there, with the vaccine being rolled out, and hopefully we can sing again in the not too distant future. So that's all for now. Have a good week, everybody. See you again soon. Bye.